Well, welcome back to Puck Watching STL. It's been a bit for the boys since a little July 3rd episode, something like that for us when we were in San Diego on a little vacation. But we're happy to be back, St. Louis. It's been a really restful summer, I think, for the both of us. We can say that. But also after that free agency that we were talking about, it's been pretty inactive on the Blues front of things until the new schedule came out, and also the surprising departure of John Kelly, legendary Blues TV play-by-play broadcaster, who is obviously a friend of the show. So we're going to get into all those topics, but first we got to get some updates from the crew here, which is only just the two of us. But what do we got, Nick? What's been going on in the life of yours and informing the viewers what you just been up to recently?
Yeah, no, summer's good. It's really, really hot right now. So you can't go outside for more than 30 seconds without just dripping sweat, or at least that's my experience.
Yeah.
It's bad in the St. Louis sports world.
Yeah,
Actually horrible. As the Cardinals come off a season or a series loss to the Colorado Rockies, who are actually on pace for one of the worst seasons of any MLB team in history. So City is also really, really bad. And I tweeted this out earlier, but hope is on the horizon. The Blues are marching in slowly but surely. Preseason is not that far away, but boy, oh boy, can football and hockey not come soon enough, at
It's
least
bad.
for the St. Louis fans in here.
No, it's really bad. I mean, it was kind of like a sweep or bust for the Cardinals, and it's like, okay, at least we win the series, right? And then you lose it today. I
Yeah.
mean, just horrible, horrible, horrible. And I saw that the DFA'd whatever or
Fetty.
Betty, which is not surprising, which probably should have happened a longer time ago. But here we are, but still somehow above 500 despite
You
all of the success, all of the failures.
you could probably DFA pretty much every starting pitcher right now if you wanted to, because none of them are good. Even
Oh,
Sonny
good.
Gray has dropped off significantly.
Yeah.
They play the Padres. We're going. I think you're going, but going on Sunday. I'll probably watch it tomorrow because my buddy's from San Diego. But boy, it's. I don't think we're in for a good one. But I don't want to talk about them. It's just too. It's too upsetting.
No, they suck. I think, and then obviously with ball watching and City, it's been a rough go for them. And that's obviously our friends over there, Jake and Justin, and we're praying for them, man, because they're a tough team to cover right now too.
City is the third worst team in the whole league right now. So that's not very comforting either.
Even when the Blues were bad, just for like a couple years, that 2 years where they didn't make the playoffs, it's like it wasn't that bad. They weren't their best team at all, but they at least put some points on the board and made it entertaining for their fans. But this is just a totally different thing for the Cardinals and City.
It's the dog days.
Yeah.
We are in it. We're living it every day right now. So it's sad, but hockey's close.
It's close. It's getting close. And then obviously had to talk about the Savannah Bananas. That sold out Busch Stadium. I don't know about 2 days in a row, but I know it sold out the first day with Wainwright going in there. But somehow there is light in the baseball world in St. Louis, but it's coming through a different place in the Savannah Bananas.
Yeah.
Like them or not, they're selling out the place. So
I struggled to put my finger on the Savannah Bananas, and I've been trying to figure out why I really just don't really care about them at all. But this guy, when I was at dinner, I was just walking through the parking lot, and he said they're a mixture of the Harlem Globetrotters and Magic Mike. And I thought to myself, that's probably really accurate. I didn't think of the Magic Mike aspect to it, but there's certainly a little bit of that in the Savannah Bananas.
yeah.
So I think that's why I'm not really very excited about it. But gosh, they've swept the entire United States of America up. So it's crazy.
Yep, I agree. And ball watching even said it themselves. We'll show it here. Thanks for the shout, but been a tough year to be a City fan, and you're right. But hopefully you're right. The Blues will breathe some life back into the fans. You'd sure hope so, because it's a very similar fan base, I think, between the Blues and City. All younger, type of audience between both. And yeah, I hope the Blues can do the same. But also, in a little my life, I've been caddying for most of the summer again at Belle Reve Country Club. And, I've had a couple great loops this summer. Particularly didn't get a picture with him, but Albert Pujols earlier on in the summer, just an Cardinals legend, a baseball legend, and a guy who literally hit, I think, 702 homers, I think, in his career,
Yeah.
something like that. And, got the chance to go with him. What a humble, nice guy he was, and a spectacular person to meet. I mean, a dream come true for any St. Louis born person in general, not just a baseball fan. But also today, got somehow survived the heat today, got out there at Belle Reve, and this is the guy who I was with, Blues fans. If you can see it, I know if we're in if you're watching on Apple or Spotify, you won't see it. But in the picture, Alex Petrangelo and me, 6'4" Petrangelo just towering over me. I mean, I look like a 10-year-old in that picture, but
Just a
had
cute
to
little
show it.
guy. The
Yeah.
cutest little guy in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't really talk much hockey with Petro. Just when you go out on the course, Nick, you're kind of trying to escape that life a little bit, just trying to hit a few balls, see what happens, and go for something low. And I think Petrangelo, if I want to guess, maybe shot 2 or 3 over par today at Belle Reve, and they were playing from not the tips, but he had still a really impressive score from there, and he can just hit the ball a mile. And obviously, we talked about it on an episode. He's injured in some regard. I think it's something to do with his hip, you were saying, Nick, earlier.
Very injured.
Yeah, very injured. I think he's
Very.
going to miss the whole season, it sounds like.
Yeah.
But and you could tell a little bit today that he was sort of struggling, walking around. But his swing didn't seem like he was struggling at all because he was just whacking it. And I was reading a few putts for him. Not all of them were dropping today. It was an unfortunate day on the greens for me. But, he is still had a lot of fun. He's a really great down-to-earth person, and obviously we still miss him in St. Louis, but we're happy to not be missing our star defenseman for the whole year, I can tell you that.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe it would be good to have him the last 5 years, but yes,
Yeah.
this year, sure.
No, and now a 2-time Stanley Cup champion with 2023 in Vegas. So that guy's a legend forever in St. Louis, obviously, but still an NHL legend. And I would guess he would be probably a Hall of Famer at some point if he keeps it up. You would sure think so. Who knows? He's just a really good defenseman, and I know has always been a force to be reckoned with on that back end against any team that he's faced. So really great to meet him. Awesome dude. But just wanted to give a little shout to Petro there because he's an awesome dude. But transitioning though into some of our topics though in this episode, there's not much to talk about when it comes to Blues hockey right now, but a big couple things that we've had in the last couple weeks here that we couldn't really post with logistically speaking the last couple. First, with the departure of John Kelly from the TV role for the Blues, and JK, again, we had him on as our first ever guest at Puck Watching. And what a spectacular guest to have. And who would have thought, if you would have told me, Nick, that, in what was that, February when we recorded with him, that was going to be his last season, I would have thought you were dead wrong, because it just did not seem like that the stars were pointing towards that. But, here we are in a new spot, 23 years with him, and a little earlier stint in the 90s with him. And then I think since 2005, he was the Blues guy. And I know the guy who was in my house for my whole childhood, and really a shame, unfortunately, to see him go. But I want to hear thoughts, because Blues fans were definitely up in arms about it. And I was also, when I initially saw the news, because he's a friend of the podcast, number one. And that guy's just been throughout all my childhood, and just didn't think that he had any chance of really leaving because of the legend that he really is for the organization, and his voice. That speaks Blues hockey alongside Darren Pang, but Panger a couple years ago as well. So what are your thoughts, Nick, about this and his departure?
Yeah, it was a huge bummer. I don't think there's anything else any other words to describe the situation. I understand that things have to change, and TV deals, media deals are always evolving, and things make sense. at certain times to maybe go away with someone like John. But the way that it was done seems pretty crazy. I was listening to the Blues podcast on 101 ESPN with Ferrario, and they said apparently they were in renegotiation talks and things were trending in a good direction. And he's on vacation, and he gets a call from the Blues saying that they're going to part ways with him. And I don't think that's a way to treat someone that's been a part of your organization for such a long time. I think it's a really huge bummer, and maybe I would go as far to say a disservice to do to someone that's been involved with the organization for such a long time and has done such a great job and has been a part of so many moments with the Blues. So I'm a little bit disheartened with the way that I think we went about that. Again, I understand that things change, things evolve, but I don't think that's any way to treat someone like John. And I really, really wish he got a farewell tour, because it would have been awesome. It would have been
Yeah.
really, really cool for him to milk every last game and cherish every moment that you have with him, and as being the play-by-play guy on the TV. So, we're excited at, for Curbs and what he can do for us moving forward, him being the radio guy and now assuming both of those roles, TV and radio. But can't say I'm very thrilled. I don't think anyone is.
No, I think you're not alone in that at all. But I was going to say as well, when it comes to JK, of course, his last moment with the Blues. Well, I would say he had 2 calls, but one of his last calls ever for the Blues was a game-tying, heartbreaking goal for the Winnipeg Jets, to tie the game in Game 7. That almost feels like more of a disservice in general. Is like that, and obviously they scored in double overtime with that, but those are your last 2 goals that you'll ever get to call, and they're against the against the Blues. So it's just such a shame. But you look back at that call, and he handled it with perfection. Just like, I can't believe it. That's what he said in the call. And I mean, nobody could. I mean, but again, just that's what he did so well in the Blues role for so long, is that just like, I think he really encompassed just how fans felt, at the times of all these calls. Like, you could tell it was so, and number one, he had the passion. Number two, it was just so realistic, and it wasn't just this, godly personality, but he was a fan, and he was a hockey fan. And all the moments I'm thinking of, like the Steen one that I posted against the Kings, and I think 2000. I want to get this right. 2014. I want to say 2013 against the Kings in overtime. And it's funny. So that series, right? You think of that call, you think of Steen and Jonathan Quick just giving the puck away like that. Do you know what happened after that game happened?
Mm-mm.
So they won Game 1. That was Game 1 at home against the Kings. Ended up losing 4 straight after that goal.
Oh,
against the Kings. I didn't really remember that.
I
Yeah.
do remember that.
Yeah. It's like people remember that moment, but they don't remember the rest of the series because of how bad it was. I wasn't really watching I don't really remember as much from then, but yeah, so that was distant memory for me. But also I think with JK, I think I love Jamie Rivers. I thought he was good at what he did. It's hard to replace Darren Pang and the way that he was on Blues broadcast for so long. He's in a great role now with the Blackhawks, but their duo, I think, is almost more at the top of mind for Blues fans rather than John Kelly alone. It's that duo and banter of Panger and JK.
Yeah, I can't believe that both of those guys are gone just in a short span. Obviously, Panger is doing his own thing in Chicago and working with NBC as well. I think still, or is it ESPN now?
TNT.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't really know how we got to this place, but we've lost 2 incredible media folk and play-by-play and color commentators and Panger and John. So, you got to move on, I guess, because the product is obviously hockey and the Blues, but they complement it in a really, really good way. And it's a shame to see both of them gone.
Yeah. No, it's a huge shame. And then the news that the Blues organization went out with. So obviously it comes with Chris Kerber and Joey Vitale taking the TV role, but they're going to also simulcast the games on 101 ESPN and obviously TV. And Chris and Joey are going to be doing both together. And this is going to be interesting for me because, as you guys know me, I'm a broadcaster and I do it at BC, and then I've been doing it for a while. And I can tell you though that there is a huge difference between being able to see something live on TV and broadcasting it versus having to describe it on the radio. It's a big difference. You wouldn't think of it as that, but like for JK's purposes, he doesn't have to, say everything of what happens on every single play that goes on. But Chris, on the other hand, when he's on the radio, has to do a lot more because nobody sees what's going on, obviously. So I'll be interested to see how they balance that, because how can you really fit storylines in as that goes on for the people on the radio? And because you can't just like, people are seeing the game, but for the people on the radio, it's like, well, what's going on in the game? We don't just want to hear this random story, from Andy Strickland. Like, probably a really good story, but it may take away from the action a little bit. So I'll be interested to see how that goes, because I know a lot of teams are doing the simulcast thing for cost cutting purposes, but I think it'll be an interesting balance to see from the Blues too.
Yeah, I personally hate listening to hockey games on the radio. It's nothing against Curbs. I need to watch it. I can't just listen to, especially a game like hockey. It's really difficult, but for sports in general, for me, I can't just listen to it. But I think it's going to be a really difficult transition. I don't know exactly if there are a lot of people that do that out there that do both. I'd be curious to see how they manage that, because it is truly a different type of announcing, I would imagine. So I'll be interested to see how Curbs does. I'm sure he'll be fine. But again, you'd rather have John doing the television, doing the TV games, but we don't have that luxury.
Yeah. So Chris and Joey, they're expanding their role, and then also some updates with additional people. So Jamie Rivers is not gone. He's going to return as an analyst for that Blues Live post game and intermission and pregame show. And then, which by the way, he's been doing since 2009, which I didn't really realize for how long he's been here. Yeah. So that's what it said on the press release. And then Bernie Federko's coming back with him for a 25th season with the Blues. A good familiar face to have back. And then Chris Pronger as well will be having an expanded role in the Blues Live and FanDuel itself. So, and also I think he does stuff for, ESPN on top of this. So he's a great name to have, I think, in the ring for Blues commentary. I love that. And then obviously Scott Warman will return. And then Alexa Dat will be finishing her time with the Blues. So a lot of changing in terms of Blues broadcast. But, I think it's one of those things with the changing industry. You can't really get always what you want at the end of the day with this. And obviously would love to keep everybody around, but you want a very, I think, effective, successful organization business-wise. I'm sure we could talk to Chris about all this and he could have some good answers, but maybe it just wasn't cost effective, I think, at the end of the day, to have those two separate at the end of the day. So I don't know if you have any more thoughts on it, but it's tough. It's a tough decision, but maybe it's the needed one.
Yeah, I don't really have much else to add. It's just a bummer. I know everyone's upset about it. Unfortunately, it's just one of those things. It doesn't seem like it can be undone, and we're gonna have to live with a JK-less Blues hockey world, which is unfortunate. But we got to keep watching the games. We got to support the team, but it is unfortunate.
Yeah, and by the way, we are looking at these comments. There's a couple people that are commenting on our Instagram that
mostly just side conversation, but
I don't really know. I forget who this guy is who's commenting here. But yes, they're all talking about BC stuff, dude. Yeah. So I have no idea. But yeah, we're happy to have you all here and talking about it. I think and none of them are really Blues fans. But that's okay. we're speaking to anybody here for just hockey fans in general, but oh, also before we get off of JK, tell me your favorite stuff, but talked about that Steiner call. I think of one of his best as the Schwartz go ahead goal against Winnipeg, that pass from Bozak getting by Hellebuck to change the whole series and flip it on its head in Game 5 in 2019. That was a crazy call. Backus OT winner in 2014 against the Blackhawks. Troy Brouwer against the Blackhawks in 2016, the former Blackhawk, right? And then obviously, and even this year, I think he had some great ones, especially as that win streak went on. Ended up being 12 games. And I know the best one, I think, down 1-0 against the Red Wings, and then you end up tying the game, Kyrou, and then Fowler gets the OT winner. And
Yeah.
JK has a great call with it. So if you want to look back at that, it's for all of you, it's a great little set of best calls. It's all on YouTube. They have it. So, but again, if there's some YouTube videos that show JK's best calls, then you know that he's a very good broadcaster and that he will be very much missed here in St. Louis. So any others that, Nick, that you have that you are at top of mind for best calls?
No, the one that's just top of mind and fresh was the Fowler backhand winner was awesome. I do recall that one like it was yesterday. It was such a fantastic time to be a Blues fan and be listening to JK make some calls. So that one's great.
Yeah. So that's basically all we have there. I'll be interested to see kind of how they navigate the whole situation with the simulcast and then how they're going to navigate putting these storylines in with Andy Strickland. But I'm interested just to kind of see how it goes. And I'm trusting the Blues staff to really figure this out because they've seemed to figure out a lot of stuff recently when it comes to coaching and how to even get this team to be a really good team on paper again. And now it seems to be that way, especially after I think a very successful free agency that we think graded a B+ on our last episode, which I think is pretty solid because you can really mess up a free agency. But I think the Blues, did it exactly what they needed to do with it. So, but okay. So on to schedule for the Blues. So they just got released last week, and first game, October 9th against the Minnesota Wild. And that's a big game to start off with. And that's a Central Division rival right there. That's returning as a very similar team and one that I think really started to gain a little bit of stride towards the end of the season last year. They were obviously missing Kirill Kaprizov for a while during the season. And then as you could see, though, once he came back, it was just lights out from the Wild. They needed a guy like him to really carry their team. And they got it, ended up squeaking into the playoffs, but ultimately lost to
Vegas.
Yeah. Which
They actually were in that series too.
They were.
Yeah. I thought they were going to win it for a second.
Yeah. So, but again, I'm sure they're going to be coming back this season with a very similar firepower. But I think it's interesting though to note with the first 10 games, right? Because last season it wasn't much to remember, the first 10 games, 15 games, because that ultimately got Drew Bannister fired. I think it was actually the first 20 some odd games, so a little bit more than that. But it didn't really set them up for much, and it made them have to really push at the end, like they did, to get in the playoffs. But so then you go on the road on the 11th and the 13th against Calgary and Vancouver, and I can tell you that those are never easy road trips. I think we can say that just because it's all on the Pacific Coast. You're in Canada. Pretty fierce crowds on in both Calgary and Vancouver. So and also both teams that just barely missed the playoffs as well. And not sure if those teams really did a lot in free agency, but if they didn't and they're returning with a similar team, I would assume that they're going to bring a very similar firepower to what they were last season. So I think first 3 games a pretty big test, I think, for the Blues.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I'm very excited for the Minnesota game. I think we're going to be there in person potentially, but It is the ultimate test. Not that one game's going to decide anything, but both teams very much trending in a similar direction. I think they had one more point than we did last year. We
Yep.
both barely squeaked into the playoffs. Both had first round exits. Both have young promising players and a good core. So I'm excited about it. I think it'll be a really interesting game just to start out with and see where the Blues are sort of at. And then, Calgary, Vancouver, never fun games just because of like what you said. It's just very far travels and tough places to play. And then you get in Chicago, Dallas, LA, Utah, all at home. And, a couple of those teams were in the playoffs. You have Dallas and LA in there, but Chicago is probably not trending still in a good direction. I think they're still going to be pretty bad this year.
Oh yeah.
But Utah, however, is probably going to be good. So I'm not sure how good, but I think they'll be much better. Not much better, but probably as good, if not a little bit better than they were last year, I would imagine.
Yeah. They obviously have Clayton Keller too, and he's just an absolute Blues wrecking ball, I would say. I think that's a pretty easy thing to say after a couple years of just playing against him with this team. He's just a tough nut to crack for the Blues somehow, even though that like he's a very good player, but one that just kind of sneaks up against you for the Blues. So I'm not looking forward to that at all. But going back to Minnesota, also Tarasenko on that team this year.
I forgot about that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Vladdy will be at home to start, or at his former home, I should say, for game one of the season here. But I mean, when you think about it, I mean, you're right. They are a very similar team to the Blues. And I think when you look at it on paper, you could probably say that the Wild are just a bit better than the Blues, probably, when it's all said and done. You obviously have, Matt Boldy, Brock Faber, Kaprizov, Rossi. I mean, it goes on and on and on. So that young core though is like still has some room to develop, and just like the Blues do, I think. Right? You look at Holloway, like what's his ceiling going to be next year? Like, can he score 30 goals next year? He was close this year, but didn't quite make it there. And can he be healthy for all the season? And obviously with Kyrou and Thomas, like, can they have similar seasons? Can they beat what they were doing last season? Hard to tell that right now. And again, Thomas was out for a lot of the season. Kyrou had all 82 games under his belt. So it's a very similar, I think, look for both teams. And I think that game will, I think, set a good tone to see kind of where both teams are at. Obviously, it's game one, a lot of room there to improve and potentially digress. But yeah, I'm excited for that. I think that's probably one of the better games that you can have, game one for the Blues. But I think it's ultimately in the Blues. I think mostly in our favor when it comes to the first 10 games. I think you could probably scrape out in the first 10. I think you could, like, and not to say that this is actually possible, but I think that they could certainly go probably 7-3 against this. Maybe, 7-2-2, who knows? But like whatever, or 7-2-1. Like whatever it may be, like that is certainly possible. Like winnable game in against Minnesota. Winnable against Calgary and Vancouver. Let's just say you drop one of those, right? Okay, fine. Then should win in Dallas, right? So now you're 2-1. And then, or sorry, should win in Chicago. Now you're against Dallas. Okay, maybe you're 2-2. Winnable against LA. I think winnable against Utah, both at home. I don't know how you think, what your thoughts on that, but I think those first six, I think it's in our favor a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to go line by line. It's not really about that. I think the key overall for the Blues is that they just need to be way more consistent this year and not have to rely on a 12-game win streak in order to, bolster themselves into a playoff spot. They need to just be overall a more consistent and just better team, which I think they will be. But those first 11 games, 7 of the 11 are at home. They need to, I think, send a message and be a few games above 500 and show the league and show fans that they're ready for something a little bit bigger, and they're not going to be this wishy-washy team throughout the entire year trying to wait for a good time to pounce. Because if you look at the schedule, and I was going to ask, what your stretch is that will probably be the most unfavorable to the Blues. But from what I'm seeing, once Friday, January 9th kicks in, you have at Utah, at Vegas, home against Carolina, home against Tampa Bay, at Edmonton, at Winnipeg, at Dallas, home against Los Angeles, home against Dallas, home against Florida. Like that is a gauntlet
Yeah.
of a stretch of games. And yeah, you get some home ice advantage on a few of them, but some of those teams are elite. And you would probably say above the Blues right now. So you need to make sure to have some games under your belt to afford to, not have to go on this crazy streak like they did in that February time span. So I just look for them to be more consistent overall. I don't need them to win every game. It's not what I'm asking, but they need to get off to a better start and need to maintain themselves too.
Yeah, I mean, that's the stretch of games I circled when I initially saw it. That January, probably the January 9th.
Yeah.
Yeah, and at Utah, yeah, and then all the way up to the 29th, and even Columbus is, I think, is going to be. It was a better team than they were last year. So
They'll be better.
yeah, so yeah, that's probably going to be the most difficult test, and it comes at a very crucial time. It's just before the All-Star break, and also the Winter Olympics, I want to say.
Yeah. Winter
I'm not
Olympics is right after February 4th against
right,
Dallas. That's when they take that 3-week break.
right. So that could be interesting to see where the Blues are at that time,
Also,
because
so exciting for the Winter Olympics. I
yeah.
am so pumped up. If you thought Four Nations was fun, ooh, the Olympics is going to be like 5 times as good. There's more games. Oh man, the watch parties are going to be nuts. Canada, US, hopefully, all things considered, hopefully they make it to the elimination rounds together and they play a very critical game. It'd be so much fun.
And no Russia again this year, though.
That is a bummer.
It's a bummer,
That's a bummer.
and because you're missing, all of the tensions aside with that you are missing a lot of solid hockey players. I think
Yes.
when it's all said and done, when you eliminate Russia outside of that little bracket, because you're right now, so you're probably the two best goalies in the league, and I think Vasilevsky not as much right now because he hasn't been winning as much with his team. But Vasilevsky and Bobrovsky, right there, the goaltending duo, just not there. That's
Yeah.
a shame. That's a shame. And obviously, all the players that the actual forward core that can be of and that first line. You think of guys like Panarin and then Tarasenko being on your fourth line or something like that.
Mhm.
Again, Tarasenko not the guy who he used to be, but thinking of that and thinking of how entertaining that would be to see, it's unfortunate. But got our boys in red, white, and blue there, and the Canadian boys, probably led by Jordan Binnington again. And we're
Yeah.
not sure though if we're going to see a Connor Hellebuck in
I
the
hope
Winter
not.
Olympics. Yeah, I think as U.S. fans, I think we probably hope not. Would love to see maybe Jake Ottinger maybe make an appearance in that. Who knows? Maybe Swayman as well. But
Yeah, couple things. If watching that first series that the Blues had against the Jets, I certainly don't want a goalie like that to be representing the country in extremely high stakes. So no, I didn't think he played that badly in Four Nations, but oh my gosh, if that is his floor, that is one of the lowest floors of
go
any
for it.
goalie I think I've seen in
Time.
the NHL. It's bad. But a couple things on the schedule. They play 4 times against Central teams. So Chicago, Dallas, Nashville, Utah, or 4 games against Chicago, Dallas, Nashville, Utah, and Winnipeg. Winnipeg, we play them December 17th. That's the rematch. So that is our first game against them. And I think that's going to be pretty cool in terms of the atmosphere. But
Yeah.
of those teams that I mentioned, we have to beat Dallas. Like we have to summon the strength to beat them at least once or twice.
Yeah.
And stop getting bullied by a team like that. I don't think we have that experience. We don't have a very good record against Utah, but we beat them, I think, twice last year. Dallas, we lost all 4 games last year. We only won 2 the year before, and we lost the previous 4. So I think it's time to turn the table on them. I think Dallas has got a little bit of a hangover from the playoff performance that they had in the conference finals. So we'll see what works. But that's my team where I'm like, that needs to change. You cannot keep consistently losing to a team that is extremely competitive like that, to show that you're also competitive and so sort of the same league as they are to an extent.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And then you're right, but it's funny you did not mention Colorado with that because we don't play them 4 times. I think from what I see here, 3 times. Fact check me on that, but I think it's 3 times.
I think that's
From what
right.
I think I
Yeah.
noticed it, which I think is a gift. I think at the end of the day,
We beat Colorado 3 times in that
we
streak.
did, but yeah, when you look at those games, though, yeah, we won them, but God, it was every time it looked just ugly when we played those guys. I mean, win's a
They're
win.
good.
Don't get me wrong; they're a good team, but God, I don't want to play them any time of the week. Like they're probably, I fear that team most probably out of any other team in the NHL, probably besides Florida.
They're the scariest, I would agree, but I think defensively they're so vulnerable, even with Makar. I just
Yeah.
don't think that they have a good enough defensive, line, if you will, to keep the Blues off the board. And we proved that 3 times in a row in that February March span. And I don't know. I think we kind of have their number a little bit. I'm not really sure, but it's fun to think about. I don't remember being that successful against the Avalanche ever.
No.
So
And those wins came at the most crucial point of the season. I think we played them 3 times in that February through April span.
and all regulation wins, if I'm not mistaken.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember I was on like retreat one day and I was just like, what? It was that last game against Colorado.
I was
And
watching it.
they were
Yeah.
no, I'm sorry. Was it at Colorado? Does that sound right?
It was in St. Louis the last time we
Okay.
played them.
Then it was the second last one. And like down to the wire, classic Blues fashion, 6-on-5. Pretty sure they scored, but it
We
was
scored it. So we scored an empty netter.
yeah,
And then
right.
they
Right.
scored. And then they pulled their goalie again, I think they may have hit the post. I'm not sure. But the Blues, that's also something for the next season. They just have to be so much better in those situations. I don't really know how you coach with that. Montgomery's got to figure that out because it's horrible to watch. And we obviously lost the series against the Jets because of it. So please figure it out.
Yeah, that's something they should hopefully figure out. But yeah, the 2 of 3 at Colorado this year, and then the 1 at home.
Okay.
So not favorable to I think, but then they have April 7th against Colorado at home. So they actually have a back-to-back against them, or not back-to-back, but a
Yeah.
home and away. So
Yep.
Sunday the 5th and of April 5th, and then the 7th. So then I think that bottom half, because it was the most important part of our season last year. So I would probably say that it's maybe a little similar next year. Hopefully it doesn't have to be that way. But so you have 4 games in California from March 30th to April 3rd. So San Jose, Los Angeles, Anaheim. And San Jose got better, by the way. Not sure if they're going to be any good.
Letty.
Yeah, right, Letty. But they also I think they got Orlov from the Hurricanes, and they got, guys developing from the pipeline with obviously Salabrini and a couple other young dudes. Who am I thinking of? The BC guy right now.
Will Smith.
Will Smith. Yeah, geez, I don't know how I forgot that. Yeah, so and Will Smith and Salabrini, I'm sure they're going to bring a lot more because they were both fantastic last year. So I think they'll be a little tougher. And then LA, I think I saw a couple cup predictions this year for LA because they were a very good team, and if they just don't play the Oilers in the first round, they may just go on and win the whole thing because they're a good team. I think remember we played in LA and they hadn't lost like a home game in regulation in like 25 games and something when we played there that one time. We lost in overtime. Or no, I think we won in overtime, but
We
then
won.
we won in overtime, but we just didn't beat them in regulation. Yeah. So, but I think that last part, and then after the California trip, then you have Colorado at home, and then at home in Colorado at Colorado, and then at home Colorado Winnipeg. That's on the 7th and the 9th. You know, coming down to the really latter parts of the season there, 2 division rivals. And then so you're actually your last 7 games, only 6 of the 7 are against Central Division opponents.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an interesting thing. So
Yeah.
Colorado twice, Winnipeg, Chicago, Minnesota, and then Utah to end, which
Mhm.
it's then at Utah this year to,
It's
to,
fate.
end, to end the season. Which hopefully it's a 5-0 or 6-1 game, whatever it was last time.
It's such a beautiful feeling, that
It
game.
really was, because like
Yeah.
Blues fashion, that game was going to be the closest game in history. And that Utah would dominate us, and somehow we would figure out a way to win. But it was the complete opposite, and we just dominated those guys. So that was not really on my bingo card for that. But yeah, I think other than that, any other notable ones? I think the biggest road stretch that they have is in November, and they have that East Coast thing that they always do. So they go to Toronto, Philly, New York, New Jersey. And
That one's not going to be fun, but
yeah,
they do it every year. I'm glad it's earlier in the year rather
Mhm.
than later. So yeah, I mean it'll be tough. Toronto's good. They may not be as good,
No Marner.
but yeah, no Marner. Philly's going to be better. Islanders, not sure. And Rangers, they did not look very good last year. I'm not really sure how they're going to be this year.
Mike Sullivan.
New Jersey's getting better. So they made the playoffs last year. So it'll be a tough stretch regardless, even if they're playoff teams or not. From what I've learned on the East Coast trip, so we'll see.
Yeah, and they're headed back east in conference right after a quick home stretch. Boston, Ottawa, Montreal, all playoff or 2 of the 3 playoff teams. Boston just missed it last year, but
Boston's bad.
yeah, Boston. Who would have thought the fall from glory for all my BC people that are somehow in this? Like, I mean, I love to see it, but it's just kind of funny just seeing the disappointment on everybody's faces from there. And yeah, we were at that spot a couple times ago. Don't get me wrong, but we're on the other end of it right now, and they are on the opposite end, and they have a new coach in as well. So I think a former player for them and now a coach. So other than that, though, Nick, I think it's that probably concludes most of our scheduled talk. We can only talk about so much unless we just predict every single game.
No, it's a good recap of it.
Yeah. So we got to rivalries and then some rematches and the Olympic break. But I guess with some concluding things, we missed the news with Bone Byram that he is not going to be a Blue next year. And, I think at the end of the day, I wasn't expecting it, but it sure would have been something for them to pull off another offer sheet this year, but didn't really get it done. Buffalo signs him, but very short. Was it a 1-year deal? I think they signed him to, yeah, or 2. Okay. Wouldn't doubt if he goes out of there in the next year and he gets traded.
I was gonna say it's not the most extensive contract in the world.
No.
So it's pretty short term, $6.5 million a year, literally fits the Blues budget almost perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was kind of funny. But obviously you would not be able to get Byram with just a signing. You would have to give up some assets, players, draft picks, whatever it may be to get them. But I don't know. I could easily see a world where the Sabres are horrible, which they probably will not be very good. And
Odds are
them getting them dealing almost said Tage Thompson. That'd be nice. But Byram at the deadline. So I wouldn't be surprised. They don't have him for that long. I'm sure they don't want to keep renegotiating with him. It seemed like just to kind of a play to keep him around and then deal him later, in my opinion. But we'll see. I would really like to. I would love if the Blues were able to get him. You just don't want to give up too much for Byram, but we'll see.
Yeah, he's his the only thing that that Byram lacks in terms of the Blues needs. Let me correct me. I want to make sure I'm right about this, but not the tallest player in the books, 6'1". But because obviously I think the Blues need as much size as they can get, and they got that out of Mayu, with the trade from Bolduc. So that's a good sign. But when you look at the Blues top four this year, so you have Pareko Fowler, and
Mhm.
then probably is it Falk and
Broberg.
Broberg, and okay, so that's pretty good size right there.
Falk's
Falk's
6'1", right?
Falk's 6'1", I think. Yeah, 6'1" or 6 foot. So he's the one that probably lacks a little bit of the size at the end of the day, which if it's in all if that's the problem with Falk being the size disadvantage there, then I think that's perfect. And then obviously on your third pairing, it's some pretty tall guys as well with Tucker and Mayu, depending on whatever the structure is. So Blues got the size. I think Byram would fit. I think honestly he'd be a great replacement for Falk. I think it would have been nice, especially, and it would have been affordable at $6.5 million with that Krug contract off the books. But they never would have probably picked him up, Falk, for the
No,
same.
no.
Um, but so yeah, that probably wouldn't have been a good deal for him. But yeah, so I think other than that, though, any other things that we would need to talk about for defensemen? I feel like that may be the only sort of area where the Blues would maybe want to add. I think the forward core is basically complete right now.
I don't know who else you would add. I think
Yeah,
the most pressing and curious thing on everyone's minds is Mayu.
yeah,
I think, I mean, Bolduc's gone. He was kind of a fan favorite. If he scores 30 plus goals next year on the Canadians, I
it's
think people are
likely.
going to be mad.
Yeah,
There's absolutely a world where this falls flat in its face. But Mayu is young and has not had a lot of NHL experience. He's got a good amount of upside, but I think time will tell. But in terms of other signings, unless it's a crazy trade, I just don't really see anything else happening. We're about a little bit less than 2 months away from the first preseason game on September 20th. Training camp's going to start sooner than that. I don't really see anything happening. I think most things are pretty solidified. You never know, but that's just my opinion on it.
yeah. I think they're solidified too. Yeah, I mean, we had this in there in our little prep. It was like if you were GM, you keep standing pat or keep swinging, and I think it's stand pat. I think at the end of the
Yeah.
day with this, because honestly, this team looks a lot better on paper than it was last year. I think at the end of the day, your centers is solidified, and that was your main problem this year. You no longer have to rely on Shen to be a formidable second line center, and he surely can be, but he may just drop down to the third line center, which is totally fine, and I think fits his identity right now with the Blues. So I think that's good. Um, I don't think there's really anything else that you would need to do.
I mean, I don't think you can do anything right now, but I think it'll be debatable. It just depends on the performance, obviously, with the new additions with Bukestad and Suter.
Yeah.
So and you lose Foxa, you lose Ryan Suter, Letty's gone. So I mean, they're gonna have to probably form a little bit of chemistry, obviously, and Mayu will be a question mark as well. I could see a world where the Blues could potentially regress. I don't think that probability is very high, but there is a world I think for sure where that could happen.
Oh
But
yeah.
I don't think it will. But it'll be a really interesting season, I think, for the Blues
Well,
because
yeah.
you don't know if last year was like, oh, 12-game win streak. That seems pretty fluky. They barely squeaked into the playoffs. They gave the Jets a run and ended up choking. We'll see if they can, make strides, which is obviously the question that you ask every team that's just kind of rising and trying to find its way. So we'll see.
I think you make a good point though, because I think of a team like Nashville last year that had a phenomenal team on paper. You have a addition like Stamkos, who's you thought was going to be a Lightning for his whole life, and not so. You get him, and a couple other great, obviously with Philip Forsberg on there and Ryan O'Reilly. Like and a little bit, definitely an older core with that, but I think very promising. But then things just went to crap at the end of the day with them. Like, I mean, we all saw it. I mean, they were really bad this year for a while, and a lot to do with goaltending. By the way, they were relying on UC Saros, who is a proven good goalie, and just didn't have it in him this year.
Yeah.
And ultimately, they ended up being, I think, second last in the Central, I want to say.
They were bad.
Yeah,
They were
they were
bad.
pretty bad. I think they were ahead of Chicago, which it's pretty easy to do that, but
Mhm.
not quite. But for how anticipated their team was, did not end up like that. So, like, when I think of that, think of there is a probability, you're right, of a team just not boding well together and finding chemistry, and just not able to get the result of getting into the playoffs and pushing for the cup. But when I look at it, this is mostly the same Blues team, just balanced a little bit differently in the centers and then a little bit with the defensemen. So your subtractions with this team, I think, at the end of the day, are people that you could do without, right? You look at Bukestad with the fourth line, still basically the same thing, just a bigger center than Fox.
Mhm.
And then with I guess and then Suter probably is going to have the most change at the end of the day. I think Mayu can fit in fine, but Suter, it's like, all right, how can you find chemistry with Holloway and Kyrou? Can you? Or is Shen going to be there instead of him? And is he going to be more finding chemistry on that third line with maybe Neighbors or somebody like that? So it'd be interesting. That's an interesting point there, where there's definitely a world where this team doesn't end up right, but I think at the end of the day, we all have our hopes pretty high for this team.
Certainly.
Yeah,
agreed.
very much so. But I think this concludes it, unless we have anything else. But hey, got to see Petrangelo today, so that's an awesome thing. But more importantly, got to get back on the podcast grind. Nick, excited to be back. Hopefully, we'll be back soon with some potential guest interviews. We'll keep you sort of on the ropes for that. Not sure. We're still figuring out some things, but let's just say I think we have some things for our audience to be very excited for in our future here as the season starts to become on the horizon. So we're excited for it. Hopefully we'll see you in a few weeks, but until then, have a great rest of the summer-ish and of your July, and we'll hopefully see you as soon as we can. All right, guys. See you guys.